Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Elma, and tonight I have here with me Austin of Humanagement. So he is the founder of Humanagement. And why the reason why I asked Austin for a live stream with us is Humanagement is something that could help business owners like us. It doesn't matter what the size of your team is, but as long as you have staff, it's very important that we manage our staff or our employees. And another thing is that why the reason why it's very important is that we have to invest in our people so that we get so that they perform better, because if we invest on them, they also invest in us back. And our employees, our staff, they are really the key to improving and growing our businesses. So tonight I have here Austin, Austin Kerr of Humanagement. And at the end of the live event, we are also going to have a giveaway, 3 LTDs for our viewers tonight. Okay, so yeah, let's start. So Austin, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'm Austin Kerr, founder of humanagement. Before founding humanagement, I have about 15 years of HR experience under my belt, whether that's being a senior executive over HR as well as other departments, or just running HR specifically. I've hired over 600 people in my tenure, and so I found that there was a gap between the human resources or the management technologies out there. They didn't work cohesively together, and a lot of them had very insufficient features. So I built humanagement to be kind of like that all-in-one platform specifically for managing employees.
Okay, so thanks for that, Austin. So, in terms of the company, so I understand that how old is your management now?
So I started building humanagement in October of 2020, so that's a little bit over 2 years ago. I've had kind of started with my test users about 6 months after that, so about a year and a half ago, and then I went live with the software about 6 months ago.
Okay, that sounds cool. So 2 years
Yeah.
and running, which is really cool. And you've been in Absolute for the past 3 months already. And I heard from you earlier that the sales are really going up. So that's really good to hear. And okay, so please show us what are the use cases and how we can use management for our business.
Totally. So, yeah, really like just kind of from a high level overview, the main purpose of Q management is to bring a lot of automations and simplicity to the kind of confusing area of managing employees. So, a very common customer who uses Q management is someone who started a business because they had a certain, like, usually a hard skill. So they were, really great at sales, or they're really great at plumbing, or they're really great at building sense, you know? And so they start with that business, and as it expands, they then need employees to meet up with demand. So a lot of people who start having a business, they didn't start the business to have employees. They started the business to get more financial independence, to have more freedom, to have not have a boss, barking orders at them. And because they didn't necessarily start the company with the purpose of managing employees, when it comes to managing employees, it can kind of start as an afterthought. And they haven't set up all the systems to really be a great, amazing workplace. So that's kind of a different role than just, oh, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm starting a business, to I built a workplace. So where humanagement comes in is it makes your company a workplace that people would love to be at. So to kind of dive in a little bit, I'm just going to share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the
Okay, wait a
software.
moment. Wait a moment.
Yes,
Okay, so now we can see your screen.
excellent. Okay, so this is the dashboard. So every employee gets their own unique dashboard. They'll see some stuff here like for clocking in and clocking out. They can see requests that require their attention, and they can see their main stats. They can also see down here the policies and courses that they have. So one of the areas that team management really excels in, and is an area that I know so many business owners and HR execs have problems with, is policies. Policies, hacks, write-ups. They can become really confusing, because what usually happens is people will start and they'll write some policies. They'll know, hey, I need a sick day policy, or hey, I need a policy based on the way that we reprimand people or hours, and they'll write these policies and they'll give them to people. But the problem is that those policies change. So everything in business is always changing. And most software that I found doesn't really allow for changes, right? If it's something that does courses for training employees, it's like static. This is the course. People have finished it or they haven't finished it. And that's all that it tells. So what happens is when you have to update a policy, one policy inside of a course, you then have this kind of confusing particle, because now you have to either reset the course, you have to create a new course with this update, but then you get new employees. So then do they do the new course or the old course? And it becomes very confusing very fast. So in humanagement, we've handled this entirely. So what you would do is you create articles, and everything's done at the article level. So an article can either be a how-to, a policy, or a warning. And when you create that article, right, let's say it's a policy, you put some text in here, put some text in here, and then you can assign that policy to division. So in humanagement, you can create groups of employees, right, like your customer service, your executive, your IT, and then when you add new employees to your company, you can just add them to those existing groupings or divisions. So when they're added to a division that has some articles, they'll be automatically assigned all the articles that are relevant to their job, and then you don't have to worry about that, right? So where that gets really useful is I'm going to open up one of these guys over here. And let's look at this one called How to Close Sales. So here's an article that tells people about how to close sales. And so what you can see here is that they can not only read this, but they can also mark it as read. I have the option, there's many options that you have for challenges. And so in here I can say, all right, so if someone has an objection, what should you do? Give up, handle their objection. So when you click this here, you can now have that recorded that I have read this on that date. And so this becomes a really powerful tool in your policies because everything's done on the per policy level. If I was a new employee, I would be automatically assigned this policy. So I was added to the group or the division that this policy was assigned to. And then I'd be able to go here and I'd be able to mark it as read. And now as an employer, they can see that I've read this policy. And then there's transparency and there's data on that. Now, if I, as the employer, were to update this policy, right, and I were to go in here and remove this line, and then add some more text. So now when I publish this, now me being the employee, right, I would now see, because it's been updated after read, I would see these updates, would see what changed after I updated it, and then I would get a new chance to mark it as read. And so this is all handled automatically, and something that is normally very confusing of updating policies when you already have policies is now extremely simple. And you don't have to do anything, and employees will be notified via email, hey, this policy got updated, and that you should now go and review it again. And that way everyone stays up to date on the knowledge. So that's one of the primary kind of use cases scenarios.
Okay. So basically, it's the onboarding that you are talking about, right? It's much easier to do onboarding because you have this built-in knowledge base. And when it comes to, say, if you have to change only a little bit, then yeah, okay. So I can see how that useful that is. And you can even see the audit trail. Sorry, I call this an audit trail where when it was read, who read it. And will I be able to see who read it?
Yeah, of course. So you can always go to all employees and you can see each employee and the dates that they read this. Obviously, there's a test account, so I've read this policy about 1,000 times. But you can see who's read it and who's not read it inside your account.
Okay, that sounds cool. Okay, so can we move on to the next use case?
So one other thing that you can do with this knowledge-based feature is you can also use it to create courses. So like any LMS, you might need to create like an onboarding course or maybe a course when someone takes a new role, right? So you can easily just use the existing articles to create a course, but the advantage here is that you can have as many sections as you want in these courses, right? Different sections. And so when someone's going through and marking these as read, it falls into the same line for updates. So when you do an update to an article inside of a course, people aren't going to have to redo the entire course. They're actually going to be notified of that one specific article that had that change, and then they can update it. And another place where courses become really useful is one in onboarding. Obviously, when you get a new employee, you have to do that. But there's also the case of companies who have regular compliance that they have to adhere to, like ISO 9000 compliance, or if you're like a doctor's office, there might be new policies or legal things you have to have all your employees read. And so this software is really useful. You can see when you have to update a policy that is existing, because when that new government policy comes out, you can just use that to update your existing policy in management. Everyone will be notified of that new version, and then they can read it. And so where that gets a little bit cooler on the employer side, you can also go to that employee's profile, and you can actually generate a PDF that shows that they've read that policy. And so you can use that for whatever regulatory body you need, or, you know, kind of as like an e-signature, if you will, if that's the challenge you choose to use. Yeah, so that's another one of the, you know, really great use cases. So kind of jumping into the employee profile. So when it comes to like just standard HR data, this is another area where, of course, we excel. So you can keep track of all sorts of data in relation to each employee, you know, their manager, their birthdays, their dates employed, all that sort of stuff. You can also keep track of the more private information if you choose to. You can set individual app permissions, or you can set things in general. You can keep track of all their time off requests, as well as how much time they have in each category against the allotment. You can assign responsibilities. So responsibilities is a really, really important area that I find almost every company lacks it. So when we're talking about responsibilities, I'm talking about something a little bit on a smaller level than a job title. So a job title or a post title, right? You would say, great, that guy is the director of sales. And that would have a meaning. But that meaning is kind of generalized. And a lot of people going from one company to another would assume that a director of sales would have the same responsibility. But as we know, as business owners, they don't. A lot of companies deal with these kind of bulk job titles on a different basis, on like the little tasks, right? In one company, a director of sales might be actually updating the CRM, and another one, it might be an assistant who's doing that specific responsibility. And so these kind of ongoing things that they need to do are often kind of just like in people's heads. And so when a new employee comes into a company and they're trying to figure out what everyone does, they're going to make assumptions based on job titles that might be incorrect. And that's a big cause of kind of contention in an office. So in management, you can go over to this responsibilities area, and you can see a very clear understanding of all the responsibilities in your company. So you can see, you know, what this person does specifically, what this person does specifically, and employees can add these responsibilities as they're given to them, or you can just add them as the manager. But then when someone comes to the company and they're trying to figure out who does what, it's very clear. This is also really useful when someone leaves the company. So when someone leaves the company, a lot of times, all the things that are in their head are just kind of lost because there wasn't really a good place for them to write it up as they were doing the job. And so management responsibilities gives them an area to kind of log that information. And that way, when an employee leaves and you get a new employee, you could just drag the responsibilities over to that new employee. And that way, nothing's missed. So like another example of where this will happen is like an HR manager, for instance, sometimes is in charge of like the kitchen in an office, right? If you have a physical office, they're in charge of keeping the coffee stocked and stuff like that. But in some offices, that would be like an estate manager, or sometimes it's the building covering it. So having a specific responsibility of kitchen upkeep would really make it easy to have that transparency of when that HR person comes in, they're going to know everything that last person did, which, you know, makes your office continue to run smoothly, especially with all of the resignations that have been happening recently. So there's no questions on that. I would jump into statistics next.
I actually like, sorry, Austin.
Yeah.
I really like this drag and drop. So if we are a little bit more creative, or I would not really creative, but organized on how we put on responsibilities. So we basically can drag and drop responsibilities between people. But I'm just wondering though, okay, so this is just showing the responsibilities and not the task, right? For now, this board.
Exactly. So yeah, so task is a little bit different. So
right.
So there's kind of two things. One area that I didn't want management to go to is to be a project management tool. It's not a project management tool. And the reason why I didn't want it to be a project management tool is because when you get into project management, you get into a lot of customization, and you get into a lot of someone like building out a solution. And so if you have a team that works on a project basis, right, which is about 50% of businesses. So like, if you're a software company, like I don't use team management to run my developers on our project. I use Trello for that. But where this comes in really handy is because a project management is usually a little bit more sophisticated, and it has kind of like an end goal in mind. They're building things towards a project. But what often will get missed when someone has a great project management tool is all the employees who don't have project-based jobs, right? So like a salesperson, for instance, they don't have any advantage in using a project management tool because everything they're doing is very like repetitive, right? Similar for someone who, let's say, is like you have a coffee shop and you have some baristas. Baristas would never use a project management tool because their jobs aren't project based. And so responsibility is kind of one tool that helps with those more repetitive jobs because you're just saying you're responsible for this always. Every week you're supposed to just continue to do these things. And so that's usually kind of missed. When it does come to tasks, we have something for kind of like the tasks that kind of fall to the side, right? So in an office place, generally, let's take up the subject of a new hire, right? So there's the actual process of hiring someone, but there's the earlier thing in an office, which is usually deciding to hire, right? And so in most companies, the request for new employees is this random particle that kind of just floats in the company. People will say it all the time, hey, I need new people. Hey, I'm overworked. Hey, I'm overworked. But they don't really have like a channel to communicate that. And so because it doesn't have a channel, it usually gets ignored because it's not deemed as like a high enough priority problem until it's too late. And then you really need to move fast. So in humanagement, what we've created is we've created a request area. The request has a few different versions. There's the time off request, which most people are familiar with, a leave, someone saying, hey, I need to take some time off. There's also a pay and post change. So I can say, hey, I'm looking for a raise. Well, this gives you a nice organized channel to say, I'm looking for a raise. They can say why they need a raise. You can disapprove them and give that documented reasoning. And then, isn't this like a continuous subject that can be brought up later? It's something that's documented. So one of the most useful versions of my request is the approval request. So the approval request is kind of like just any sort of request. So for instance, I need some more staff in tech support, right? So someone can put in a request that says, I need some more staff in tech support. And then they can detail the whole situation. I'm overworked, I'm busy, there's more requests than we can handle, blah, 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 right? And then they can say the solution is, I need one staff hired who has experience with coding, right? And so this is going to automatically pull up the approver, like that I'm submitting it to, being my senior directly, but I can choose anyone else in the company if I need to, right? So just for demo purposes, I'm just going to choose myself because then I don't need to log out to show the whole process. But when I submit this request, that employee is going to get an email saying, hey, you got a new request. They'll be just see in their dashboard that they have requests. And then they'll be able to see these requests over here for approval, right? So now that employee will be able to look over here and they'll be able to see these requests that came in, and then they'll be able to forward that request to another employee, right? So let's say it's like a hiring decision. They might not be able to, your senior might not be able to make a decision of, we're going to add new payroll. They might need to send that over to Treasury. They might need to send it over to CEO. So using this system, they could forward that request over to CEO, which is also very useful, or they can forward it, for this case, to themselves. And so once it's reached the terminal, and as they go, also they can leave comments over here on the side. And these comments aren't visible to the originator. So the originator won't be able to see what people are saying, but they'll be able to see that it is moving through the company. And so they also don't need to check on it unless it's actually being stagnant. And so once it's been reached someone who can approve it, and they're saying, yes, I do want to hire this person, they can just click approve. And so when they click approve, they get the option of assigning it as a task. And so this is one way that we kind of get into tasks, because your project management tool, especially if you're a company that only makes, let's say, 3 or 4 hires a year, you're not really going to have a whole project management board for hiring people, because that would be too much. That would be not valuable to keep track of all year if you're only hiring a few people. So a task like that is great for key management, and it's where it kind of works in tandem with a project management tool, kind of filling in some of those blanks. So now that I've decided, yeah, we are going to hire this person, I can assign to this person and say, please hire this person this week. And so now this is an actual task that can be completed. So I can go over to my assignments. I have option of viewing it in tab format, or I can view it in a Kanban format. And so then I can move these things over as they're being completed. And the originator will be able to see also that this progress is happening. And so now you have a lot of transparency for something that would normally be kind of a confusing, often forgot about subject of hiring a new employee.
Okay, so right. So the assignments, I'm a bit confused because the assignments to me is something like task too, right?
Yeah, it's basically like a task. You can also, without going through the whole request process, you can just create an assignment for an employee. Like if you need something just done by a certain date, you can go and create that, create that for them. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to be clear on where, like, you could kind of use this as a project management tool if you wanted to, but it's not going to be as robust as something like a Monday.com. But I did that intentionally because Monday.com is great for a customizable process if you need something to track, like a complex project. This is more just for like those kind of off the hand, hey, I just need to have that employee do a certain something, and I need to know when they did it, or have a little bit of tracking. That's kind of where this excels.
Okay. Now, there's a question about, okay, because it's not really a project management tool. So can we embed a project management tool into this or yeah?
Yeah, so one thing that's really useful in here to kind of make sure that this stays as like a really central work hub is you can create custom items in this menu over here. So you can go over in the settings area over here, and then you can go and add additional menu links. So here I can add a name. I can say like, Monday.com, and then I could say, and go specifically to whatever URL. And then that will be able to be added to this menu. Oh, invalid URL. But once you add them, you can then click on those URLs, and then it will redirect employees to that link that you provided. So it's a really easy way to kind of like, link it to all the different softwares that you might need for your business.
Okay, so we have to look at the custom item. Okay. All right. So yes, I am starting to find people. Okay, so okay, so this is another question. Does it send automated notifications to all the participants?
Yeah, it does. So when you, for instance, like when you assign a new request to someone, that employee will get an email. They'll also see something like in their dashboard saying, hey, you have these requests to deal with, or these assignments to deal with, depending on what it is. They also see these little notifications on the side. But yeah, they do get emails. Like if you send a request to an employee, they'll get an email with a link directly to that request, and it'll contain the information of the request as well.
All right. And typically, for what kind of company size would you recommend an app like this?
So probably about 10 employees is where it really starts to, that's where you're going to start feeling the problems of your current process. I've had companies as small as like 3 employees use it and have a lot of benefit, but they were someone who was very experienced in these fields already in HR, and they kind of knew that they wanted to set up their company for success. If you might find that, the having to go through a software if you only have 1 or 2 people can be a little bit cumbersome. Whereas when you get to 10 employees, it'll really it'll simplify things that you're already doing that are frustrating processes. Like if your company's gotten to the point where you've started maybe writing a policy on a Word doc, that's where you can really start using management. And another thing that's really beneficial about humanagement is the features are able to be turned off. So whereas like if you were going to go with, let's say, like a Monday.com or one of those like low code builders, you would have to build up each requirement as you needed it. And that's going to cost you, $5,000 to $10,000 in customization, as well as obviously the little bit higher monthly cost. And you're going to be building those things as you go, but they're all going to be built based off your knowledge, which if you're newer to managing employees, you might run into some problems with that. So with Q management, everything's already built out. You can go into the software, you just bulk add some employees, and basically you're good to go. You can already use things like requests very easily. You can use Anologist by just creating a single article, and you don't really have to like set up a lot of stuff. But it also might have some features that you don't need yet. Like let's say if you have a small company, you're not really tracking hours yet, you might not need hour tracking. So if you go over to settings, what you can do is you can go ahead and deactivate an app. So I can say, I don't want to track attendance with my software yet. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to hide that feature. I can, of course, always make it unhide it, but any employee who's like a non-admin isn't going to see that feature at all. Like you can see that Pocket that has completely left the dashboard. It's not in the software. And so using that, you can kind of like scale down the software when you first start using it, when you're, let's say, a 5 or 10 person company. And then as you are scaling up, you can then add in those features, and they're going to be all pre-built, all, super easy to use, very user-friendly, and then able to expand and kind of grow with your business that way.
Okay. So, yeah, that sounds really interesting. It's something that actually, as long as once you start having more than, I would say, 4 employees, you really need to start having an employee management system, right? Yeah, based on experience, this is really important because there's just too much paperwork. And I'm actually glad that now these kind of software are available, because long time ago, like, you won't find this kind of software. And to manage employees is really a pain. They have to go through the same training, and yeah, so it really takes a lot of time and effort to get the employees or the new staff on board and to make sure that they keep on performing. And
Exactly.
so this is really, really cool.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is there any questions so far? I haven't seen any questions, so you can go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So one thing that's really useful too, like I said, I tried to make the software so that it's very plug and play. You can kind of just use the software out of the box, like be set up within 5 or 10 minutes and immediately find value, especially if you hide some of the features you don't want to use yet. So one of the areas that's really useful is the knowledge base for that, because everything's done on the article level. You don't have to go in, like if you want to use an LMS, right, you would really need like a learning management system. You'd really need to have quite a few employees before it's worth the time of building an entire course and then assigning it and worrying about all of that. But with Q management, you don't have to do that to start getting value. You can just go in, create 1 or 2 or 3 articles, and you'll have the tracking in there already. You'll have that those automations to help you out. And you can even, if you don't want to add people as users into the software yet, you can create public articles. And so when you create a public article, you can just make an article public, and they're going to get this URL. It'll be like app.humanagement.io/your company's URL or your company's name. And so you can give that out to people, and they don't need to sign in, and they'll be able to see articles that you've decided to make public. And this makes it really, really easy for employees to just, immediately get some of this knowledge. If you have like even a vendor or 1099 employees, you can give them the knowledge this way, and then they can actually record the way that they can still record that they've read it. It'll ask them for the name since they're not signed in, but it'll still add them to the audit log, and you'll still have all that transparency. And that doesn't require you to have much of anything. That's just a feature you can jump in and use the software right away. So one other feature that I would love to dive into is my statistics area. So statistics is a subject that most people know they need, but because it can be so cumbersome to keep track of their numbers, a lot of people don't, right? Maybe they'll keep track of 1 or 2 different numbers that are already being generated from a certain software. Like I use like Stripe to keep track of all my payments, and I might look in Stripe every now and then and see their graph on my income. But that really gives me a very low snapshot of my business, and it doesn't enable me to make data-driven decisions, which we are all kind of recognizing is really important. So in this software, you can use my statistics feature to keep track of any sort of number, whether that's your income, whether that's employees output, whether that's your number of new customers or new patients. You can use it to keep track of anything. And it also integrates with software so that if you wanted to keep track of your Stripe sales, you wouldn't have to do that manually. But if you have something you want to keep track manually, you can also do that. So to start, you would just go and create a new stat, like let's say number of new clients. This is a stat, and I'm gonna keep track of it weekly. So now I have my number of new clients. I would be able to go over here and add some values. So I could say, oh, I got 2 new clients this week, and then next week I got a few more new clients. Say 9. And so this is going to give me a nice simple graph to show, kind of like a lot of people might use Excel for this, but as you can see, this is a lot easier because you automatically select the right date. It gives you color, it gives you visualization. And so this can quickly become much more powerful. Like I said, if you want to, you could go over to my Zapier integration, and then you can make it so that, so now using this, you can say, okay, every time I get a Google review, keep track of that. Or every time that I get a support email, I can keep track of that. Every time someone finishes a task in Monday, I can keep track of that. And so this kind of then expands that, and you can have it alongside all of your data in one hub instead of having it scattered about where you sometimes forget about it. And so you can then kind of see your company's progress week after week. And where this becomes really, really useful is when you kind of pair this with the idea of responsibility. So if you have an employee and they're responsible for, let's say, making sales, and that individual employee, or that employee is responsible for, let's say, handling support requests, you can have them keep track of those support requests. And then when one employee leaves or gets promoted, and then a new employee steps in, you can give them that same stat to keep track of. And now you can really see how one employee kind of compares to that other employee, which, obviously can be really useful in understanding whether to give people raises or whether to fire someone, and that sort of stuff. So there's a few more tools that you can also use for this. In addition to manual stats or integrated stats, you can also have calculating stats. So let's say I want a stat that says gross income divided by number of employees. So I could go over here and I can create a formula, and I can say I want the gross income and I want it to be divided by a stat of number of employees. I can then say I want to add 10 to that number, or I want to divide that by 50. And so using this, I can create an automated stat that gives me more powerful metrics that would, glean more information that aren't readily available inside of the data. And then I can also choose to print this out. I can also use some features for comparing the different numbers. So let's say, for instance, I want to show labels on here, or I want to accumulate the values. So now I can see not only the values as they are added up weekly, but I can also see the totals that are being generated as it's accumulating for that period. I can go to this periods area and I can choose 12, 24, 48, or 52 periods, or I can go to this custom range. So now I can select an exact range and I can see any data point in the past and kind of see that and see how it compares. I can also choose to turn off accumulate, and I could compare a range. So now I can see how this one stat is doing this year versus last year, or compare, different ranges. So if I have an employee that was working really great last year in October, I can then compare that same employee to a period in October, and then I can kind of see how those two people are comparing. So this feature is something that is very, like everything, it's very basic in the front. You can just use it to simply keep track of numbers. But if you have more uses that you need, or as your company grows and you want to have more data clarity, this is a feature that can really grow with your company. It can really, give you that clarity as you continue to go.
Okay, cool. I like these graphs. I like graphs a lot. So this is something that
Yeah,
works for me. Okay. I just never thought of a having this kind of graphs as
right.
part of
Most people
HR.
don't. Yeah, but I mean, like that's why I kind of say like it's not just an HR tool. It's really like a management tool. If you're
Mhm.
a manager specifically, you get very concerned about because you're shelling out money for employees, so you're very concerned, especially if you're like in that CEO role. How what is the output? What is happening, right? Because one thing I found with software is that a lot of software is built by software people, right? So a lot of people who have these kind of hard software-based skills. And because of that, they think of things in a project basis. They think of software on the basis of projects because that's how software companies are run. But that's only covers about 50% of businesses. Any sort of mom and pop shop that's out there, selling physical wares or any sort of plumbing business that's doing very repetitive work, right? Anything that's industrial, these aren't really working on project basis. They're working on a repetitive basis. And so when you have a repetitive job, you need a different set of tools to be able to keep track of things and be able to decide, are these employees worth it? Is our company on the right track? If you want to sell your business and at some point and someone says, great, well, how's your income? How's your projection? How's the output? A lot of businesses go, oh, I don't know. Let me go and spend, a month or something looking at an Excel sheet and trying to generate some data. But it's much better to just have that data because obviously it's important. Obviously, this is how you're doing. And you kind of need to know that in order to be able to continue to sell.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay. So by the way, before we continue, I just want to tell everyone that okay, I'll just show this on the stream that I'm trying this this is something new that I'm going to try today where you have to fill up a form so that you can join our giveaway for tonight. And this was suggested to me by Faz Musa yesterday, and we implemented it today. So thank you so much, Faz, for this suggestion. And please submit your names, your email on the form so that we can add you in the lucky draw later on. Okay, so sorry about that. Let's continue. But I pinned this already in the groups.
Nice, awesome.
Okay,
So
so
any other questions that have come up yet?
no more, not much questions so far. I think
Okay,
everything is
cool.
pretty clear, so that's actually quite
Yeah,
good.
yeah, that's one of the big problems I was trying to solve was that a lot of the software in these fields is not very clear, right? So I try to
Mhm.
make management as intuitive as possible. At every development stage, I'm always asking people questions, especially people who are non-techies. How would they use this? Or is this simple? Is this named in a way that you would understand? What would you think this would do? And I really try to dial that into the software so that when you're adding employees, they're not going in going, what am I supposed to do now? How am I, what? It's just like, it's intuitive. Oh, I have a request. Oh, I want to get a raise. What would happen if I click request? Oh, that's there. So everything's kind of built in that way that what people think things will do, that's what it'll do. And for that reason, it'll be very easy to integrate that into your company and then make it that better workplace.
Nice, nice. So yes, that is, yeah, I wish something that I had a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So just to let you guys know, if you don't have, oh yeah, so they said you are very clear with your explanation, so that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so guys, please sign up for the live, and we have 3 licenses to give away. And on top of this, actually, Austin is very. Can you please check if it's pinned on a? Okay, to the person who asked me, which group are you on? Which group are you asking? Let me just check because my computer really slows down whenever I do a live stream. This is very RAM intensive.
No problem. So while you're waiting for that to come, I can go ahead and show some of the other features. There
Okay,
is
yes, please.
fortunately a lot of them. Okay, so let's see here. So now when you're dealing with stats, Just a few more things on some of the things it can do. So another area that it really excels is because it can do different data types, or date types rather. So I call this interval types, right? And there's lots of these kind of little hints all throughout the software as well that kind of tell you how everything works. But so there is an interval type of going from a weekly stat to a daily to a monthly or to a yearly. So if you're entering values daily, there's cases where you're going to want to see how am I doing for the month or how am I doing for the year. So you can just click this button here, and it's going to convert that data into that new type. And you can also choose when it's adding, is it going to do a sum or is it going to do it by an average? So if it's doing it by an average, it's going to look at the average value during that period. If you're going to do a sum, it's going to add up all of those values during that period. And so you can kind of really play with this data and understand it on those scales as well. And one thing that's really great about the way that it does that is instead of just adding up the weeks, it's actually going to like break it down into the working days you had, so that, and then combine that into the month, so that the month is really an accurate view of what you produced in that 1 month, not just in the weeks that ended on those Fridays in that month. And so you can also use filtering. So in filtering, we can kind of create little groups of stats. So automatically when someone goes to their stat view, what they're going to see is they're going to see their stats. So that's just going to be all the stats that are assigned to them as the owner. But they can also see some of these other groupings like their division or all the stats, or they can see like this specific import stat. So these are all the stats that have the tag import on them. And so now this person, what they're going to be able to do is go over here, and they can, if you see there's this little line on the side. And so this is the viability line, which shows like what their target is during that period. Like if it's, let's say, someone who's making bags of coffee might say, I want you to make 10 bags of coffee a day, and I want you to track this daily. So then they can keep track and put that data in there, and you can see what they're producing on that daily basis and if they're meeting or reaching that goal. Now, if you go over to the stat type, you can also make this an inverted stat. So when the stat becomes inverted, it's then going to make those numbers.
Oh, sorry, Austin, you were talking and I wasn't sharing your screen. One moment.
No problem.
Okay, can we go back again? Because you actually hid your screen earlier. Okay, so can we go back again?
Oh, yeah, no problem. Okay, so over here, we have a settings area. So in this settings area, we have some options on how we're going to display the stats or how we're going to deal with the data. And so what I was describing was this viability line. And so this is showing this line over here, which is saying like what you're expecting them to produce. So if you have an employee who's, let's say, like making bags of coffee for a shipping company, then you might say, I want you to produce 10 bags of coffee a day, or I want you to do 50 a week. And if you were keeping that stat daily and you had that viability line, you would then be able to see whether they're meeting or reaching that goal, and they would know what that goal is. So that brings some clarity. Now you can also choose to go from a up-down stat, which is where, you know, when the stat is up, it's green, and, you know, it's showing that as a standard progress on a stat. You can also make that inverted. So when you have a stat that's inverted, what that's going to do is it's going to, as you can see in this stat, now 1 is at the top and 2 is at the bottom. So now that stat's inverted, and now when the number's higher, that's considered bad, and instead of good, and all that sort of stuff. So you can also choose to have a range stat. So when you have a range stat, now you're saying not only is there a goal, but you're saying that goal is all that matters. So you're saying if you're above 8, then that's good, and if you're below 8, then that's bad. Versus just if you're higher than before, that's good and that's bad. So that's kind of going a little bit more into see. Now we can see even though this one is going down, it's now green because it's above this threshold line there. And so we have a few other options in here, like you can make this a primary stat, which shows up in their dashboard as a big graph. You can choose how you scale it, either auto-scaled from based on the numbers it has, or scaled from 0 to the top number. You can also generate zeros for any periods that you didn't add values. Like let's say you want to keep a weekly stat of sales, but you don't make sales weekly. You don't have to go and put in the zeros. It can generate those zeros for you. And then you can also make that stat private. So when you make a stat private, what you're doing is you're making it so that only the owner and their seniors can see that stat. No longer will any employee be able to see the stat. Like if it's something dealing with money, you don't want your general staff to be able to see what those numbers are. You just mark it as private. Okay, so then another thing that you can do, this is where you change it from calculating or manual or external, like an integrated stat. And then you can also add it to different divisions. You can change the stat owner. You can say when you started doing the stat. You can also view like when it was last updated. And so all those options kind of give you all that clarity. You can also archive it, or you can choose to fully use the stat. That's how that works. And then let's see. So another area is very similar to request is purchase request. So purchase request, also called a purchase order sometimes, depending on the company. This is where someone can do a request specifically for money. So in a lot of companies, especially when you get to a little bit bigger size, the different places where you need to spend money can become very confusing and can be a big area of loss for your company. So for instance, if someone is in an office and they, let's say, need some new office supplies, they can tell someone, hey, I need some new office supplies. And then that person might then go and order either the wrong supplies or way too many supplies or not order them at all. And that can cause confusion, frustration, etc. So in here, you can do a purchase request. So let's say I want some Amazon stuff, and I can say I need some copy paper. I can include the Amazon link. I can put a price to that. And all of this stuff can be that much more organized. Now, the reason why purchase request is a little bit different from request, because in purchase request, you usually want to set only one or two people as able to approve the company to spend money, because you need to, have some tight control on that. So in the settings area, you can say this person is the purchase approver. And in here, similar to request, you can submit to someone else. So it can go and flow through that company as it needs to get whatever sign off as it goes, but then it can also reach a point where it gets forwarded to finance or submitted to finance. Now, your finance approver, like I said, is someone who has that specific permission. They'll be able to go to that request, you can see it, and they can approve it to pay. Now, you can set someone else up as your purchase payer, right? That would be like your treasury person or sometimes your HR, depending on your office, and then they would be the one who actually has the ability to spend that money. And again, you would have the full clarity of through this whole process of someone be able to see their request. They can see as it's going through the company, is it forwarded? Is it approved? Has it been actually purchased? Can I expect it? And then that way people don't need to check up on things unless they actually need to. Sometimes these things are stagnant. And so they have that clarity for that as well. So then another area I can jump into is the org chart. So when we're talking about people clocking in and out, and we're talking about people being able to add comments and stuff for that, as well as, get the clarity on people's responsibilities, or maybe see what their primary statistics are and how those things are doing, right? You can use the org chart. So this org chart is also generated automatically. As you add employees, it'll automatically generate. You don't have to do anything. Of course, it does have drag and drop functionality. So if you want to say this person is now this person senior, you can change it like that. As you have a larger company, some of these tiles have like a smaller version if you have like, I think over 20 or 30 employees, so that, you can still see everything in a condensed way. And so, yeah, this just kind of gives that instant orientation to where people are, to what people do, so that you're not having to go and re-explain this to all of your employees, but it's created automatically. So you don't have to worry about maintaining it or really generating it in the first place. And so the final feature that I can really dive into is the checklist. So checklist is a newer feature, so it's still kind of a little bit more in the experimental phase. Basically, the checklist is something that you can use when you have something that's a task that is reoccurring that has very exact steps. For instance, if like an investment company uses this, software uses this to make sure that when there's payments to pay to investors, all of those steps are done exactly. So for these types of recurring tasks, you would have you would create a checklist template, and then you'd be able to have your new copy that you would generate. You can then give it a title, May 5th, right? This is one that I set up for someone who's getting a new shipment in. And so people would then be able to go and click through and finish off those different tasks, and it records, sorry, It records who's done it. They can input data. You have different types of field types. It will assign different sections to different employees based upon the division or category that those employees are in. And because it does it by those divisions, also it'll be smart. So as employees leave and come, it'll know who the new employees are, and it'll assign those correctly to them. And so yeah, it also gives that transparency for those things as well. So that's basically all of the features of the software. I've tried to go through a few different use cases in here, showing if your company's in certain positions or has certain problems, this is how you can use the software to solve it. But yeah, if anyone has any more specific questions on use cases or anything like that, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so far we found more of comments. So they think that this software is very powerful and that you are very clear with your explanation. And it's very, yeah, because it's powerful. And this is from Sajwal that he's most likely going to get it. So thank you. So yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm always happy to kind of jump into an onboarding call. We make sure that we have this little help button over here, so people can always go in here and report a bug or create a chat, and this will go directly to one of our representatives so that we can make sure that you're getting all the data, all the help that you need. The purpose of the software is to make work easier. We want to make managing and working with employees easier. So if there's ever any situation where this isn't doing that, we want to know right away. We want to make it more clear. There's a lot of these kind of little help boxes around the software, so you can always see what exactly does this feature do, how exactly does this work. Maybe start a feature tour if you skip that when you were first starting. And so yeah, that's basically what we have.
Okay, and I just received a private message from Fernando that that he met up with you for lunch, I think a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he's actually very impressed with your software. So yeah, that's really good. Okay, so hey guys, if you okay. Remember to add duration to task and add ability to connect to KPIs. So that's a suggestion.
Yeah, so there is, that was someone that I met with recently. So we are hard at work on adding those features as well.
Okay, nice. By the way, do you have a roadmap?
Yeah, so we have a roadmap over here. You can get to it just by clicking this link. And so you can always go and add whatever feature requests you have an idea for, and then we will update this and let you know when we finish your feature.
Okay, that's nice. So I haven't seen any other questions. And guys, to those who hasn't, I received 11 names for the giveaway, 11 entries, but I can see 13 people live right now. So I don't know who I missed. Okay, so maybe we should start with the giveaway because I don't see any questions anymore.
Okay.
So, yeah. So we have giveaway for 3. It looks like I missed someone here. Let's show this on stream. Yeah, I'm learning to use forms as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So who am I missing? I'm missing someone. One is doubled. Okay. Sorry, guys. I need my 2 screens right now, so I can't see anyone now. One moment. Okay. That's why. So I'm just collecting the names. So I have here Kenny, Dinesh, Inderjit, Alberto, Niru, Inderpreet Singh, Jaydeep, Atli, Venkat, so Venba, Leo, HM Shuja, and Vijay. So total 12 entries. Okay, so now I'm ready to share my screen. I found all of them. Okay, so I will hide your screen now and then I'll go share my screen. Oh, Mandy, you did not. Hey, you Trog and Mandy, you have to fill up a form to join the giveaway. Did you see the form? Mandy Singh, can you please fill up the form? Okay, Mandy is in the webinar from the start. Okay, just one moment. I haven't shared my screen yet because my computer just hanged. It's so crazy. This is really RAM intensive. Okay, so now I am calling names. All right, so these are the names. Let's make them alphabetized. So Alberto, Atli, Dinesh, H.M. Shuja, Inderjit Kaur, Inderpreet Singh, Jaydeep, Kenny, Leo, Mandy, Niru, Venba, and Vijay. Did I put? Oh yeah, Mandy is already here. Okay, so everyone is here, right? And you can see the names. Okay, so we are going to have three winners tonight. Oh, Utrol, you just don't want to share your email with me. That's why. Okay, so let's see. Let's shuffle. Okay, so here's winner number one. Hey, Dinesh. Is Dinesh here? Hey, Dinesh. Normally Dinesh is here. Okay, but he's not responding. Dinesh, if you are there, please respond. Okay. Okay. I'll just write it
He's
down
here.
and.
He's Facebook user.
Okay. Cool. Next. Um. Oh, I didn't remove Dinesh, did I?
Looks like he's. Oh no, he's there. I see him. He's right
Roll
below Kenny.
again. Roll again. Okay. But Dinesh is here, so we have to remove him because he already won. You cannot win twice. Okay. By the way, so what you are winning here is one code of LTD of your management, which is actually good for 5 users, right? Or 5 employees,
5 employees. Yeah.
right? Next is Mandy. So congratulations, Mandy. And then, how come I did not remove that again? Okay, and the last winner. Oh, Leo! Congratulations, Leo. So, okay, Mandy is here, Dinesh is here, and where is Leo? And I cannot see. Is Leo there? Okay, so Leo is here to claim the prize too. So we got our three winners. And for the winners, please send me a private message and I will send to you your codes. And just to let you know that your management is available on AppSumo. You can is okay. So what is your deal on AppSumo right now? Like it's for 5 users, and in terms of functionality, everything is included, right? Or all the features are
Mhm.
included,
Yeah.
and all the
Everything's included.
future upgrades, updates, and all that.
Mhm.
right? Okay, so just want to
Yep.
be clear on that one. So congratulations to all the winners. So we have Dinesh, Leo, and Mandy. So congratulations, everyone, and thanks so much. And I'll see you guys again on Monday, where we are going to have Camille Bucala of Tabs Folders, where he's going to show us the latest updates on Tabs Folders. So it's another productivity tool that is actually
All right.
great for teams as well. So thank you so much, Austin. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. And I hope that this helped you and this helped you make a decision on whether to purchase you management or not. And I hope that if this helped you, please do support you management and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Good night.
Okay.